Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little. Today we're going to be discussing how to put players on hand ranges. And sometimes you can put a player on a very specific hand by the river, given the way the hand played out, and sometimes their range is wide open. And you really have to see how your hand does versus a very wide range. I think a lot of amateur players really focus on always trying to put their opponent on a specific hand, or at least a few specific hands. And I do not really think that is the best way to go about playing poker. I think you need to keep the ranges wide and adjust accordingly. So in this hand, we get aces under the gun. This is from a $10,000 buy-in tournament. We make it 800 at 150, 300. Obviously, we are raising our best hands in this scenario. Folds around to a player in the small blind who re-raises to 3,200. So a pretty big re-raise. Which hands do we think this player is going to be re-raising? Well, this player is a aggressive, creative player. He likes to splash around, but at the same time, he kind of likes trying to outplay people. He takes a lot of pride in outplaying people. So knowing that, what do we think his 3-betting range is? Well, when they fold him in the small blind, he starts off with 100% of hands, but you can pretty immediately cut out all the garbage, right? So he's obviously going to re-raise his value hands, his absolute best hands. So maybe these. These hands are very clearly in a re-raising range. Actually, if I'm in his shoes, I call everything because I don't want to have a very tight re-raising range because it makes you very easy to play against. But he's re-raising, so he must have something. So what are hands that loose, aggressive, splashy players typically re-raise in this scenario? I think it's going to be, well, these hands, obviously. He may widen it a little bit to include hands like these. And he may also add in some bluffs. So which hands would this player like to bluff with? I think that's going to be hands like ace-jack, ace-10 suited, and then maybe these ace-x suited. I think these are pretty sweet hands to effectively turn into a bluff. And then maybe hands like these. This is assuming he's flat calling with these hands. I assume my opponent's going to call with king-queen suited, king-jack suited, queen-jack suited, jack-10 suited, all the smaller pairs, and then maybe king-queen and ace-jack, and then fold everything else. So that could mean that if he's 3-betting with a polarized range, which is the best hands and also hands that are not quite good enough to call, maybe he calls with this one too. Maybe he's 3-betting with these hands, something like that. So he may also decide to 3-bet with some of these marginal suited connectors that are not good enough to call with, stuff like this. But as you can see, we don't really know what the bottom portion of his range is, or if that is even in his range. So it's really difficult to say. Also, he may just decide to get me with Jack-6 offsuit from time to time. And you can never really foresee that coming, and that's okay. So anyway, I imagine he's getting after it with some range kind of like this, with all of these hands weighted to not being in the range a decent amount of the time. But you can pretty clearly keep aces and kings in the range. So anyway, he did make it 4 times my raise, which is pretty sizable, but a lot of people are making it bigger from the small blind in today's game. Whenever they're out of position, at least. All right, so, which is all the time, I guess. So anyway, he made it 3,200. I make it 6,800. And now he calls. All right, so now he actually has to have something to call here. I didn't make it too big because I really don't care if he sticks around with 7-5 suited. But I imagine he's going to fold out most of these junkier hands. He's probably going to fold out the ace-x suiteds. He's probably going to fold out king-10, king-jack, ace-10. And now we're left with a range kind of like this, although he may still have these sporadic suited connectors in here, something like these. So let's give him a range of this. Maybe this is right, maybe this is wrong, but you know he's not sticking around with Jack-6 offsuit, most likely. So flop comes 9-3-2, and my opponent checks. So now, should I value bet or should I check? Well, which of these hands is he going to call with if I bet? He's going to call with these hands that are suited. He's going to call with the 9s. He's going to call with these hands if they're suited, and the 9s. And he's going to call with all the overpairs. So what we can do here is we can click on suit selection. Then he may call a small bet with ace king and ace queen high. So let's give him this hand, this hand, this hand, this hand, and this hand. We want these to be diamonds. So we click suit selection, click on diamonds. Okay. And then I think he actually may stick around with all of these overpairs. So now what we can do is we can type in my hand. We have ace of hearts, ace of clubs. Do we have ace of clubs? We have ace of spades. Click apply here. Okay, here we go. Ace of spades, ace of hearts. give us the board. 9 of diamonds, 3 of clubs, 2 of clubs. Oh, sorry, 3 of diamonds. Let me click evaluate. And as you can see, our aces is demolishing his calling range. Notice if we take out ace queen and maybe some of the ace kings, we're still crushing him. And that's really just because his range is all draws, right? We're only really losing to well, none of them actually. We don't even have jacks in his, we don't even have nines in his range. So anyway, let's go back to giving him this wide range. We have a pretty clear value bet here. So this is a great spot to bet. Notice I bet 5,500 into the 14,000 pot. I think that is a good bet size because it really does let him stick around with a lot of stuff. If you start betting big, like maybe 10,000 or 11,000, maybe he starts folding hands like ace king and ace queen, and who knows, maybe 6-9 with king 10 offsuit for all we know, or king 10 suited of clubs for all we know if we bet small, which is great. So turns a king, opponent checks. So now, what is he going to call a bet with? Well, at this point, he's probably going to fold out the nines if I bet again, I would assume. Maybe, maybe not. It's tough to say. Let's say he folds out the bad nines. He's going to stick around with flush draws if I bet small. And he's probably going to start folding out ace king and ace queen at this point if I bet small. So let's give him this range if I bet small. Hopefully I bet small. I do bet small. 5,500. And notice this is actually tailored to keep him in. Actually, it stays in with ace king. What am I saying? This is actually tailored to keep him in with stuff like ace queen and random underpairs like pocket tens. I mean, you have to realize I want the guy in, right? I'm not trying to make him fold. Also, notice that with his stack size, if I start betting larger, like 10,000 on the turn, he's going to realize that he is pretty much all in, and that's going to maybe induce him to fold out some stuff like a 9, which I really want him to stay in the pot with. So we want to bet small here to, again, keep his range as wide as possible. Notice this is the exact opposite of what a lot of amateur players do. They bet large to try to keep their opponent's range tight. They want to really know what their opponent has. But here we're doing the exact opposite. We are betting small to try to let our opponent stick around with a bunch of junk so that his range stays as wide as possible. So river's the jack of diamonds. Pretty bad river for me. All right, so now what will he call with if I bet the river? Well, he's for sure going to fold a 9 at this point. He's going to fold pocket 10s. He'll probably fold pocket queens. So now he's left with this, right? So we have flushes, pocket jacks, ace king, aces, and kings. So we click apply. Put in the board. We have king of hearts, jack of diamonds. You can actually see pocket aces is now an underdog if I bet and get called. Maybe if we think he calls with pocket queens for fun, maybe we can include that. Remember, we didn't even have the king jack or the ace jack in the range pre-flop. Maybe we give him, well, king jack actually hurts us. Queen jack may not even call. If we add pocket queens into his range, you see we're in fine shape, but still not loving it, right? So the only way this becomes a value bet is if he sticks around with some random 9s. So do we think a player is really going to stick around with some random 9s on this river? And I would say probably not. Also, say I'd bet tiny again, he may even check raise as a bluff, which would be a disaster for me because I think I need to fold. So all in all, you saw that sort of best case scenario, we're sort of like 50-ish% equity, which is not good enough to value bet. And then worst case scenario, if our opponent does not have pocket queens in the range. What happened here? Yeah, we go down to 30%. So this is a spot where we go from having a really good amount of equity on the turn to very little equity on the river. Let's just go back to the turn to show that to you. Nothing, not a whole lot changed on the turn. So we were crushing them on the turn, right? And it's important to recognize that. And then the river, when the river's the 3 of diamonds, or whatever, the jack of diamonds. River's the jack of diamonds. And we lose probably pocket queens and 10s. You see now they're actually far behind. So it's very important to recognize when you should be value betting and when you shouldn't. Notice if it goes check on the river, he stays in with the queens and the 10s, obviously, because he can't fold them. And you see when it goes check, we actually expect to win a pretty good amount of the time, even on this scary river. But if we bet and get called, we're often very unhappy. So that's it for this hand review. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned a little something. And if you want more content from me, be sure to check out my personal site where I post an educational blog each week at jonathanlittlepoker.com. Thanks for watching.